Well, happy Wednesday, January the 31st, everyone. This month sure passed by fast. So welcome to the Wednesday Istio work group meeting. And first up, we have a issue from Zhenghu. Is he on the call here?
No, I don't think so. I can bring it up for him, although it was partially in response to getting a PR merge, and the PR has been merged, but it's also kind of future looking. But it's also, if Mitch isn't here, who's kind of the feature owner, it's probably not useful. So maybe let's put it at the bottom, and if Mitch joins and we have time, let's get to it.
Okay. So then, John, you have the next item.
RBAC glob match. Oh yeah, so this has been a very, very, very popular issue, feature request for Istio to add kind of some more advanced way to match URLs in our authorization policy. Exactly what that means, whether it's a full-on regex, which is often requested, or something else is up to debate. I think for the most part, there's been some loose consensus that we actually don't want full regex, but we do want some sort of globbing support. So you could say, like, I want to match the /user/star/foo API, for example. It's fairly common in APIs to have, parameters in the path, and so then you can match those. So I think there was kind of two reasons why we haven't done this yet. One was we didn't want to do RBAC, and we weren't sure if alternatives were suitable. I think we've done due diligence there and found that the vast majority of cases are suitable with a glob match. Then the second thing is, okay, now we decide what we want the API to be, we actually need the implementation. Envoy has recently added, well, actually it's not merged yet, but it will probably be merged like today or this week or something, support for doing this. And specifically why, like, we could translate a user-facing glob to a regex that we pass to Envoy, which they already support today. But it's a little suspicious to do regex against URLs because there's so many, like, normalization and all these other issues that, well, maybe we could write a regex that's correct. It's quite hard, quite tricky. It feels something better maintained by Envoy natively so that, they can adapt to all those, and we have a broader community to, make sure it actually works. So in my mind, all the prereqs have been ticked off, and we kind of need someone to just plumb this through in terms of putting up an API PR and a small PR on Istio to pipe everything through. I want to run it by folks here to see if others agree and that we've kind of removed the blockers here. And if so, then we'll find someone to try and send out PRs, and obviously we'll review on the PRs some of the details, especially around exactly how we're represented in the API. So I'm just looking for a kind of directional agreement if we are interested in this.
Is it for gateways only or for sidecars too? Can we restrict it to gateways?
Yeah, I mean, it would just be anywhere you can use authorization policy. Like, we don't have fields that are tied to specific places that I don't even think in Istio there's different logic. We don't even know. I mean, we could know, of course, but we don't generate different things for sidecars or gateways.
Well, we do generate different things for sidecar in many ways, but also we have ambient coming, and I'm worried about doing very fancy stuff on sidecars instead of gateways. I mean, this is typically use case for gateways, so perhaps we should consider doing it in gateways first, see how it goes, see how it interacts with ambient, see how it interacts with other API servers that can be integrated.
Should I go? I'll leave the response to comments last, but John, I read the Envoy stuff. So this is following the URI template spec specifically? What was implemented in Envoy?
Yes, but I don't think we should expose the full template necessarily. Like, we can expose to users what we want, which I think is just a glob match on one segment of the path. and then we can translate that to the template.
Okay. That begs the somewhat obvious other question about having URI template matching in path matching, which we should probably bring up in the gateway API specification, right? Because that actually, wasn't that an open issue in gateway? Because I mean, URI template is kind of the gold standard for path-based routing, right, for API management solutions, and that would make a lot of sense to promote to the spec. Custom, as for your comment, right, I worry about creating bifurcation within the authorization policy API, which is where this would show up. If we said not for sidecars, we could certainly indicate different levels of support for the feature, right? But it'd be very hard not to have that feature be supported at the beta level for sidecars.
I'm okay with sidecar last or gateway first, because you saw my document about scalability in gateways and how we kind of implement something for sidecar first and then it doesn't scale. And
it would certainly happen, right? If we were not to make it part of the beta feature set and put it in the API, we would be probably forced to accelerate the implementation of authorization policy status work as outlined in the other doc. To even do that bifurcation, that seems a bit like the wrong reason to do this.
Well, we can put it in only if it's attached to a target ref, basically. It's a new spec, basically. So
yeah, but then we'd have to have
I'm not saying never, but
but then we'd have to have validation and status telling people why that was happening, right? Okay, I mean, otherwise, I'm very much in support of the feature in general.
If I can raise one more concern here, remember scalability on gateways and having policy attached to routes. Having regexes in an authorization policy kind of forces a hand, because you have to apply it at least on a level you cannot attach to a route, because obviously it can match. There is a mismatch between routes and authorization policy and the regexes. So that would have a tremendous impact on scalability of gateways and a lot of other things. I wonder if we can restrict it to, when used in gateways, which is what I'm mostly concerned about, to attach to route, basically. So the regex will apply after routing and only apply to the route so it can scale. So we can do as much regexes you want after you match users, but not force 100 regexes for each host.
Yeah, notably, actually, if you had it in the route matching the support, then you don't necessarily need it in the authorization policy support, right? Because you just attach to the route and then you don't have to select further on the path. Although there could be cases where your path match is like prefix user and then you want to match the,
Exactly. You do routing first, and then you already kind of don't pay the price on other routes, and then you can do as many regexes as you want, X to Z or whatever you want is not a problem, because it's only your route that is impacted.
I generally agree that we should do attachment to route and that it is more scalable if we do so, especially if we start adding regex. Is there a more tighter coupling that you're pushing for here, or just that we should also do that and they complement each other well and we should recommend it when attached to route or something?
For gateways in particular, I would strictly restrict this to fields attached to routes, because we can relax it later, but if we start by saying you can apply regexes wherever you want and forget about scalability, people will start using it because it's convenient and will be stuck with that. That's why I said sidecar last, because if you do it for sidecar, nobody cares about scalability because you have only one host practically, so there is no scalability concern.
Yeah.
But if we want to support, multi-tenant or large scaling gateway, we must consider these factors. So if we do first with HTTP route and then we do some testing and quantify the impact in performance, scalability, and so forth, then maybe we can extend it.
Yeah, makes sense. By the way, one thing I do want to bring up is the support in Envoy is ultimately doing regex under the hood. So it's not like I could imagine a more efficient implementation of this, but it is doing regex today. So
I don't mind regex, by the way,
Yeah.
for if it's per route, it is not at the host
Yeah.
level, because the gateway specification also has regex for some reason. I'm still not clear which of the 5 regexes is there, but well, we'll just do whatever Envoy is doing instead of trying to reinvent the wheel and map. I mean, it will be.
yeah, I mean, I definitely want to do the attached route. I think it's useful for all the reasons you said. I'm not sold necessarily. I'm not restricting it to only route, but I see the motivation there, and I mean, I would be fine with that if others want that as well. So I'm either one's fine there. It would probably be good
I do say only.
Oh, I thought, well, I maybe said like to start with. Or,
first.
Yeah.
Start with routes and then figure out.
Yeah, we may want to have someone start actually speccing out what attached to route is, and well, actually also making sure that besides you and me talking right now, other people are silently agreeing and not silently disagreeing, and start making some progress on that. I had a doc, but it's like 2 years old at this point, so it's probably outdated, but we could maybe revive it and just kind of spec things out more. It was pretty high level, so.
A quick question on that. Right now, the API change, its target ref is singular. Attached to route, one route might present some cardinality concerns, right? If you're trying to reuse routes across gateways.
Is that something to discuss upstream? I suspect. I kind of agree.
No, that's like there's no requirement in the spec that target ref is singular, right? For any policy attachment type, following the meta resource attachment model.
Well, you are supposed to use they kind of do some duck typing to some extent. Well, there's an idea of doing that. I don't know. I think there might be some tooling in the new gateway cuddle that, like, in theory, can look at arbitrary resources, and it's probably not fully fleshed out. But that being said, I think it's also supposed to have the defaults and overrides, and we don't do that either. So we're already kind of a little bit off of the spec there.
This part's kind of in flux. So the like defaults and overrides is for inherited policy attachment, but like Nick Young is currently working on a revision to that would basically clarify the kind of like split between direct policy attachment and inherited. So like direct, I believe, is intended to remain singular target. Inherited would be applied to multiple targets. I think there's some clarification needed on like the defaults and overrides syntax not being mandatory, maybe, but just like if you have two policies, one of which targets a namespace and one of which targets a service, clarifying the like expected behavior between those. Yeah, so I've talked with Nick a little bit about this, and hopefully there's going to be work in progress to clarify and clean this up. I don't think that our existing implementation is necessarily problematic. I think that the spec will converge towards something with which it makes sense.
Yeah, it would make sense from my perspective, at least, to allow APIs to add a target refs and or target ref singular field.
I prefer just the plural, even if you like use your controller to restrict it to a one, just because that lets.
I don't mind that either. I was just I thought it may be more appealing to others for compatibility reasons. Like, we've already shipped target ref, so we probably have to. We can super hide it and make it deprecated and whatever. But
right.
It's probably too late.
It's easy to add a alternative if you need to specify more than one and just still support the singular syntax if whatever.
Yeah, but just specifically because Keith, you mentioned when you said target ref is defined as singular, just looking at what you said in the chat, is that the spec or what we did in Istio?
That's the spec, so I can link it here. Each policy resource must include a single target ref field. defined in the spec.
Okay, that seems inherently problematic.
I
That is
don't
something
necessarily disagree.
Yeah, I think that's something that I'll talk with Nick about as we're getting into some of the like cleaning up the existing policy attachment stuff.
Okay, because yeah, I mean, it makes it very hard for admins to write common policy to do that and not bifurcate types or repeat resources, right, or create indirections, right, to solve this problem, which just right, it just leads to clutter. Yeah, I would rather not inherit that debt. And by virtue of attaching to route, right, we can inherit that quite quickly. Like an admin, if they want, an admin wants to attach an authorization policy to a gateway, the logical options for them are to attach the same policy to multiple gateways or to attach the policy to gateway class. Or multiple gateway classes even. Which, if we limit them to route, right, that could get very expensive for them to maintain. Specifically deny policies, by the way, Costin is the use case I'm thinking of.
Louis, I'm pretty sure we can sort it out. I mean, I don't have to do my comments on that thread, but again, either upstream multiple references or we extend the spec, because it's still, a workload selector. We can add whatever we want as an extension specific to Istio. We are not strictly required to use.
I don't want to invent new status behavior. Right, workload selector already implies status behavior that's not in line and could never be in line with the gateway specification. So if we're going to allow
example of extension, yeah, I agree with you.
Yeah,
I'm not saying workload selector. I think as an example, we can just add target refs for Istio, and that's it.
Yeah. I mean, I would be in favor of that, and then we can try and resolve the spec. But we would still adopt the status schema for target refs.
Cool. I guess so. It sounds like there's general consensus on moving forward with this. Obviously, we'll debate the details on PRs. Sounds like we have some action items on Gateway API and for making some progress on route attachment. Does that sound? All right. The next one's also mine. I feel like we can probably talk about this for a long time, and we probably don't need to, and there's a lot. So maybe let's limit this till 9:35. So there's kind of two reasons I brought this up. One was maybe to talk about this feature specifically, but more generally about how we should be handling PRs like this. Do you mind opening the PR, Francis? So what this does is basically an internal-ish refactor of how we generate XDS. So instead of putting the stats filters inline in the listener, we reference the extension and then we send it over ECDS. So it's fine. Like, it's an experimental feature. It's off by default. We're saying, open to hearing feedback. My concern with it is that we're sticking this feature in, but we have no path forward from where we are to where we're going. So I want to make sure, like, we're not approving PRs like this, that we don't have a path forward. Like, we don't want to just keep accumulating experimental features, right? And so I think I posted a list of questions at the end of, like, what is the motivation of this? What's the criteria for success? How are we going to find that information? what's the path from removing this flag and making it on by default forever? What's the, where's the roadmap for this? So I guess, I don't know, why did I put this here? I guess I wanted to see if people agree with me on that this is kind of something we should expect from PRs. And if so, to start kind of enforcing this and making sure that people are doing this on these types of PRs.
Yeah, I generally agree with that, and put a comment down at the bottom around maybe formalizing the GitHub machinery around how we track this stuff, and like sponsoring and such as that. But I do think it makes sense to like, I would like to know in GitHub, is this PR tied to a feature that is not yet stabilized? Do we have an issue for that non-stabilized feature? Can I query with a tag to find all the non-stabilized features? And if we need to revert it because it's not ever stabilizing, can I go find the relevant PRs from that issue, right, that we've decided is never going stable or something like that? I think there's ways to make that a little bit easier, but generally I agree.
Yeah, we do have a Istio enhancements process, kind of like Kubernetes keps. We don't really use it though. So there's definitely room for improvement there.
Something a little more lightweight than that, like as a halfway point might help. I don't know though. But yeah, something more formal I think is important.
Yeah. And to be clear, like I'm not a big process guy. Like I'm not saying that we need to have like, fill out 100 legal forms to fill us out. Like even if we just answer these questions in the PR description, I think that would have at least been sufficient for me, although I can see reasons why we might want more machinery.
Right. If the stabilization of the feature will extend beyond this PR, I would like to have something that tracks that basically. And it looks like it will in this case.
Yeah, we should also make a clear distinction between implementation detail changes and API or exposed external features. I mean, it's slightly different criteria process or for something where we optimize the implementation or we change something or we do something internal, which this is, versus introducing a new API or feature like my favorite now, DNS auto allocation of IPs or something that is user visible.
I agree, but also I would consider this a middle area. Like it's different than refactoring some code internally. Like there is user-facing visibility. It's just not the utmost user-facing.
Yeah. I think compatibility switch testing and having the clear feature definition of API definition and verifying that multiple implementation are equivalent in functionality. That's probably the most important thing for us to put processes around. I mean, for this one, I mean, it's it works or it doesn't work. It's faster or it's not faster. I don't think it's a problem to turn it to move it forward. It's just a matter of getting enough testing and then flipping the flap. That's a bit.
Yeah, I think that generally speaking, I feel that maybe we're missing a piece of the enhancement/change process that, for example, Gateway API has. I think we all agree that KEPs are way too heavy. The KEP process is way too heavy for what we're trying to do in Istio. But one thing I like about the way Gateway API does things is that, generally speaking, you have something you can point to describe the what and why of the change that you're making. And it's expected that the motivation is not purely this is good, this is bad. You have to have some level of like performance data. I think that would be useful in the case of this PR, for example, or user motivation or some feature gap. And to, I think, Ben's point, as far as information for tracking, one of the big things I think would be really helpful is to be able to find an owner for a particular feature. Multiple people can collaborate on a feature naturally, and so it's important for TOC as well as just the Istio community to know when a certain feature is not being pursued anymore. So let's say, for example, this feature gets merged in, and we have a path to maturity. What happens if we're not seeing progress? Who do we go to contact? Who's kind of owning that feature moving forward, and when do we know when to call it dead? or when to find more people who think it's a good idea, find people to go and implement it. Exactly, yeah. Sponsor, vanishes. Those sorts of situations. So I agree. We don't need to necessarily be overburdened in process, but I do think that there are a couple of gaps, and it's a lot, in my opinion, to be putting on whoever's able to review the PR to always be aware of these sorts of things. I'm glad that John requested changes and made sure we have this conversation. But I think we need to have a stance kind of as a community about what kind of standards you want to hold ourselves to, so that at least we can consistently enforce it.
Yeah, I agree with everything you guys said. I mean, honestly, this is also why, I saw this PR coming. I'm like, okay, I don't have like full context because there was no design doc, right? The benefit to the user, whether there's API change for the user, it's all not very clear unless someone is willing to spend the time to really understand what the proposed changes are, which a lot of people doesn't necessarily want to spend that time without the design doc in the place and socialize it with, the leads and the TLC first.
Is the right process then just to ask for that as the next step?
Yeah, I was thinking the next step too, because we should maybe as a team, record something from this meeting and provide that feedback to this person, Ziran.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, it's like this, there's a motivation for the PR, which is performance, right? And now we've introduced a PR and we've said it's off by default. We'll wait to hear feedback. And then we're just going to turn it on. This is not going to happen, actually. We're going to get no feedback, most likely, and then we're going to turn it on and say it's stable. This is, yeah. I just saw a constant comment on a different, completely unrelated thing that said this is the Istio way, right? So, like, I don't know why we need to merge a PR to test if it improves performance, right? Like, I want to see if the PR improves performance. Show me it improves performance, and then we'll merge it. We don't need to.
Right, exactly.
It's not like we're not Congress. We don't need to approve the law to see if it works, right? We can review it first. I think I'm really starting to sound like Austin now, I think. But there's no, the Istio master branch is not the only place code can live. Like, we can, have a moderately long-lived branch. People can try it out. We can have builds. It's not so bad to not be merged until it's ready, I think. I mean, for smaller things, like, I don't mind, but this is actually a fairly large change, and it's not a one-time slight complexity change. This is actually going to impact us forever, because it means, for example, if I want to go make authorization policy apply differently in one context versus another, like we just talked about, now authorization policy is explicitly keyed as XDS resource names. So we have less flexibility in what we can push down to XDS. Will it break us today? No, but it could limit us, right? So we want to make sure we're actually getting value out of that trade-off.
Since I heard my name, John, maybe we agree on something else. I asked many times to have a dev branch where all this kind of stuff goes on, which is not what goes into the release, and where people can experiment to have lower bar, and merging from dev to production to main will kind of promote it to, basically separate the development and experimental features from at code wise. Now that the code is relatively stable, you don't make refactoring every release, and that will also kind of force the move forward, because you want to get into the main branch. Anyway, that's my yearly request for separate branch for experiment.
Cool. I think it sounds like we are at our time cap, and it sounds like we're fairly aligned here. So I will send that feedback on to the PR. Shall we move on?
Yeah, sounds good. I was just making sure you're comfortable putting that feedback. I think you have everyone's support, so that's good. All right, so the next topic should be quick, hopefully. So first of all, I want to congratulate Daniel. I'm not sure if Daniel is on the call. He's been recently nominated as build test release maintainer. So thank you, Eric, for the sponsorship. And there was no objection after a few days when the issue was open. So we went ahead, made that change. There are currently 3 nominations out. In the community repo. So first nomination is Ben. You guys all know Ben made a lot of contribution to Istio and most recently on the IMPOD CNI work. So we went ahead, put the nomination out. So let me actually link the issue here. So Francis, if you want to present, let me go ahead and find the issue. Sorry, I should have done this ahead of the meeting. But yeah, if you go to the issue link, which is 1314, I'll put it in the meeting minutes.
1314.
Yeah, I put the link in. 1314 is for Ben. So I actually called
Oh, there we go.
in the community repo. So I called a vote yesterday, I believe. So right now there are 2 options. I think general consensus I hear from people is people are very in favor of promoting to Ben as a maintainer, and will determine the scope of what Ben should own and maintain. So one option is right now we don't have this, but we could potentially look into create a dedicated group for Istio CNI and then have Ben as a maintainer for just the Istio CNI portion. The other option is let's just promote Ben to networking maintainers, which Istio CNI currently is owned by the networking maintainers. So basically we got I think we got a tie. However, I don't think everybody's vote counted the same. So if I look at networking work group leads, John Harvard and Steven basically are in favor of promote Ben directly to networking maintainers, and Rama, who is the other lead, is in favor of promoting Ben to Istio CNI maintainer. So with that, I think if we buy the vote, which is promote Ben directly to work group networking maintainers. So I want to pause here, see if there's any opinions or is this the right way to vote? Because I think this might be relatively new in the community to do it this way.
I'm just catching up on the thread. Generally, I don't think we've excessively tried to use GitHub permissions as a way to partition maintainers on topics that we trust and don't trust them to maintain.
Yeah, that
Right.
was the concern John had. Yeah.
It's more, making sure that people know that Ben is the right person to be reviewing specific PRs, rather than Ben should not be able to submit code into a particular place.
Yeah, I would 100% agree. Like if Ben, sorry to use you as an example, it could be anyone. If we can't trust Ben to not go approve some PR and some code he doesn't know, he shouldn't be a maintainer. And I do trust that if he doesn't know code base, he won't approve it. And that's an expectation of any maintainer. No one knows everything in Istio, so I routinely, many times a week say, I'm not an expert here, defer to XYZ. Looks good to me though. I don't approve, right? I think that's perfectly fine. Now there is the discoverability aspect, which Keith, I think, brought up as well. If we want to have some way of marking who is kind of a subject matter expert on particular areas, seems like a useful thing to have, but I think it should be orthogonal from the working group and GitHub structures and code owners.
Is there a tool that allows us to subscribe people to specific directories or files and then auto attach them to PRs.
That is code owners, I think, largely. The issue, I think the way you go about doing that is you make them a group, a part of the bigger group as well as the smaller group, and just not have, for example, no file or subdirectory is owned by CNI only. It would always be CNI and networking, but that's kind of an ugly hack. I don't know if there's a way to just be reviewer but not code owner automatically for subscription purposes.
Yeah, in Kubernetes, they have their own custom system where you can have reviewers and approvers, which solves that problem. GitHub system that we use is not as flexible. So,
I mean, is there some other baked in pre-existing integration into GitHub? Like GitHub,
there might be some ecosystem tool. Like it certainly doesn't seem that hard to like have someone written one. So there's probably one exists, but
like a GitHub action with a bunch of path regexes would probably do the job, right?
Right, yeah.
I mean, so do we want reviewers and approvers? Is that, make sure I'm understanding correctly? Is that kind of the ask or your point, Louis? The discoverability problem. I don't see any reason against it necessarily, but just want to make sure I'm clear.
I mean, we have reviewers and approvers as a kind of logical role, right? We certainly want approvers, right? But I think we're okay with approvers being fairly coarse in terms of partitioning the code base. But reviewers can be more fine-grained based on, right, the people's personal preference for what they think they should be paying attention to.
Yeah.
Right. Even like if you're not a maintainer, right? Ideally, you should be able to subscribe to changes in specific aspects of the code base if you felt like it, and get at least CC'd or attached to a PR because you cared.
Yeah, and absent hitting the subscribe button on each individual PR, that's not really possible today.
Right. And like, you know, I achieved this with Gmail filters.
There you go.
But that's not a very maintained or scalable way of doing it. But it certainly does work for people if they want to do that. But if there was a way to make code owners work for that purpose, like auto subscribe, that might be of use to the maintainers. And maybe they're the audience that should try and be satisfied first with the tooling, right? And then we could expand it to reviewers and others.
Yeah, that's part of the appeal of the Kubernetes process, in my opinion, because approvers can then be able to, for lack of a better term, find those PRs with more signal because a reviewer has already taken a look at it, and be able to hone in on those as opposed to everything kind of being fresh. Not that they wouldn't be looking at the PRs anyway, but it certainly, I think, helps in the maintainer side from a priority perspective, where I can know, okay, this has a certain level of I don't know, quality or feasibility because a reviewer has already taken the time to give some initial feedback. So I think that's certainly a benefit.
Okay, that process seems a longer process we could improve down the road. But for now, you know, does anyone have any objection? Just promote Ben to networking maintainers.
That sounds good, and I think we need to promote Keith to process czar.
Oh goodness, I'm gonna shut up now. Never suggest the other process improvement ever again.
It was
All right.
So
All right. If there's no objection, I'm going to take a to-do to record the meeting minutes in the GitHub and also open the issue, the PR to promote Ben. The next I have on the agenda is to discuss 2 other members I'm also nominating for discussion. So the one of the member is Aris. The other member is Platform LC. So maybe let's discuss Platform LC first, which is 1316. Francis, if you want to bring up, which I'm putting in the meeting minutes as well. So I feel like there are some consensus on Platform LC that we would like to see more contribution from him. I did a calculation. I think he has a 15 or 17 merge PR. I think John also entered his input. Rama entered his input. Although we don't have input from Stephen, but we got 2 input from the networking work group maintainers, the leads. So I think that's probably sufficient given Lisa is not active. So I'm leaning towards enter, hey, we would love to work with them to get more PR merged, submitted, and John, go ahead.
Yeah, can I ask, did these 3 people reach out to you and ask for you to nominate them, or did you just nominate them without them expressing interest in being a maintainer?
No, I told him I'm interested to nominate Ben. Do you see anybody else I should nominate? So, and then they told me they want to be nominated. So yeah, they do want to be nominated, but it's because I asked about, are you interested? Because I'm nominating Ben.
Yeah, I don't know. It just feels a bit weird to me. Like we're, we want to nominate Ben, and then we feel the need to like include others. Like
I mean, trying to
we
be
can just
inclusive.
we can just nominate Ben, and if others are interested in being maintainers, they should speak up, and like we should generally encourage people to be on a path to maintainers. I don't like this bundling though.
Yeah, I understand that, but I want to offer this opportunity. I don't want they feel like they don't, work with me that closely and I didn't think about them. So yeah. I'm not saying, we have to approve it, but I think it's good to be able to have the discussion and provide the guidance to them, right?
Yeah.
Okay, so if there's
anyhow,
no objection
on the specific one, I agree. Like they haven't met the bar. It's a hard bar for a reason. So that we don't have to have these hard conversations. I would love to help them and others kind of progress to become maintainer if they're interested, but they don't meet the requirements, so it's kind of a open and shut case here.
Yeah, so for Platform LC, I don't think it would be any disagreement. So if we can move on, let me move on to Aris. So Aris got, I think, 2% in favor of promoting her as at least for Istio CNI maintainers. So I know some of you share your opinion. You think maybe she needs a little bit more time. So if you don't feel comfortable, do it in the meeting with your opinion. Feel free to reach out to me offline. Honestly, with her, it's a little bit harder for me to figure out how many PR she merged on the Istio CNI or networking because she's been on the project for a very long time. I don't know how to calculate John, and as you know, so it's a little bit harder for me to say, does this person meet the qualification or not?
Yeah. So in my opinion, like the maintainer has a bar of 30 PRs. Like they clearly meet that. That's the minimum requirement. It doesn't mean that if you hit 30 PRs, you're instantly a maintainer, right? So I don't think that part is an issue. One thing I want to point out, Iris is a maintainer of 3 working groups already.
Which working group are she part of? Steering? Just making
environments,
sure
user experience, and security.
Okay, got it.
And I've seen quite a few great contributions there. The thing the question when someone wants to, like, I don't want to gatekeep anyone, obviously. But the question that I always ask when someone wants to be a maintainer is this person participating in maintainer roles, which is very different than submitting PRs? And do I trust them, if I go out of office for a month, that I'm not going to come back and like a bunch of garbage has been merged that's breaking all of our users? I don't know that I'm seeing that from Iris in the networking space. So it's kind of, I'm not sure that at this point it makes sense. Like obviously Iris is a huge contributor to the project and super important. But if they want to be a networking maintainer, I would expect to see reviewing of networking PRs and getting more involved in that space, personally.
Yeah, that's a great comment. Keith, what do you think?
I was going to make a very similar comment here, in this, not with Irish specifically, but I wonder if our current requirements for maintainers aren't maybe incentivizing the wrong behavior, not the wrong behavior, but incentivizing a somewhat orthogonal set of behavior in contrast to the role of maintainer. Yes, a maintainer is a subject matter expert in a particular area of Istio. Yes, we expect them to contribute in the form of code, but really one of the main jobs of a maintainer in Istio is to review code. And there's not currently, I don't think, any firm bar for code reviews. And I feel like that's probably, code and design docs to Jeremy's point in the chat. Those are both ways to kind of show that you're interested in doing maintainer type behavior, or fulfilling a maintainer type role. So with Iris specifically, I sort of agree with John, and I almost wonder if we shouldn't change our guidelines to reflect that, because it's not immediately clear. When it comes to that particular aspect, I think we can make that more clear relatively easily.
Yeah, I've been looking at the requirements on GitHub right now. So it says 30 substantial PR, which John mentioned, and must be an active participant in the community, contributing code, perform review, triage issues. So we kind of cover that. We just don't have a metrics to say, like, how many do you need to review?
I think that's a good thing. It should be subjective, right? I do want to keep in mind for people as well that, like, you don't need to be a maintainer. You can submit PRs. You can submit 1,000 PRs and not be a maintainer. You can review 1,000 PRs and not be a maintainer. And your review is useful signal to others as well. Assuming people don't think that you're just blindly approving everything because it doesn't matter because you don't have permission to merge, right? It's still super valuable work. Being a maintainer really means that, one, you're expected to be accountable for that area, and that someone can go say, like, hey, we need to fix this, and you can make it happen, or kind of herd sheep to go make it happen. And that you have sole authority to accept changes in that space. That's a very actually high privilege, like beyond just a normal reviewer. So, I don't want people to think that, like, you have to be a maintainer of every working group to be, like, have success in Istio. You could very well not be a maintainer at all and be a major contributor to Istio.
Yeah, agreed. Maybe we should look into the reviewer role, as Keith was mentioning in the chat down the road. Eric, what's your thought?
The one thing I was just going to add, it sort of goes back to what John was saying before too, is back when we actually had work group meetings, this was somewhat easier to, identify a maintainer within a specific work group, because they were usually fairly popular, called out within work group meetings, right? Now with the combined work group meetings, it becomes a little bit more difficult to say who's talking about a particular thing. I mean, I think the work group leads probably still do a good job of identifying some of that stuff, but it's a little bit tougher with the current combined work group meeting, I think, than the past. Just a thought about trying to identify maintainers in a particular work group, right?
Yeah, makes sense. Okay, I think I have all the information I need. To summarize, I'm going to enter in the GitHub to encourage Iris to focus more on perform code review and also contribute code in the networking area to be able to get a maintainer status in this area, and also remind her that she's already been a maintainer on different other code area as well. So we definitely appreciate her contribution for the project. Sounds good. If so, okay, cool. Thanks. Keith, I'm sorry, you have a topic too. Sorry, this is taking longer than I had imagined. Go ahead.
No worries. I can at very, very least queue it up and maybe we can cover it next time. But got a request from for some folks around guidance for canary upgrading H gateways in Istio. So if folks want to be able to do a kind of advanced wait for advanced manual split manual what's what I'm looking for, manual migration to a new revision in Istio with the kind of quote unquote classic ingress gateway. We've kind of got docs out there for how to do that, so that users can feel confident about the rollout of their ingress gateway and delete the new deployment when possible. Wanted to see if we have any guidance for doing that with Kate's gateways, because it's a controller that's managing the deployment and service. There's not quite as much control, and wanted to see kind of if how folks are solving this, or see if we need to maybe add some docs here, because from a doc perspective, it may look like a potential feature gap between Istio gateways and Kate's gateways. So wanted to bring that up and see what folks what folks had to offer.
Keith, I don't think we have guidance per se. As far as I can tell, our use of Kate's gateways is compliant with Flagger, which is one of the two common tools to be used for sort of canary upgrades, because Flagger uses deployments. So our gateways use deployments. Our gateway controller creates a deployment. Flagger will copy that deployment, and then when it changes, it'll slowly increase versions in the new and decrease versions in the old. Now, Flagger also wants to write a virtual service in front of that service to gradually shift traffic so that we're not just shifting based on the number of instances. Like if you have a deployment with only 2 nodes in it, rolling out just based on instance count is not terribly helpful. It's not very granular. We don't really have anything that sits in front of ingress gateway in order to be able to shift that traffic back and forth. So we have to rely on the number of instances in the service in that case, but it is compatible. It's not compatible with Argo rollouts, which is the other way of doing this same behavior. Argo rollouts requires using a CRD in lieu of deployment. It's called the Argo rollout CRD. And of course, our controller does not write an Argo rollout CRD. Instead, it writes deployments. So there may be some more we can do here in terms of maybe a blog post that documents how our gateways can be canary upgraded with Flagger. I don't think Argo rollouts is very likely for us to be able to integrate with here.
Keith, we're low on time. I put a response there that hopefully helps, but I won't read it out loud since we'll run out of time if I do.
Yeah,
it mostly aligns with what Mitch said.
Gotcha. Yeah, that makes sense. I think the general takeaway that I'm getting is that the documentation for canary upgrade for classic ingress gateways is more something to allow users to layer something on top of it. If a user wanted to do the same thing for a Kate's gateway, they could use Flagger potentially and put a virtual service in front of it to handle traffic, but
not virtual service in front of it. But I tell you what, actually, if this is something you're interested in moving forward, I'd be happy to collaborate on a blog post. I can spin up a lab environment where we can sort of try out the various ways of doing this and kind of report our findings.
Yeah, I think a parallel doc for the Kate's gateways here would probably be useful. And might even be applicable beyond Istio, maybe. But even still, like even the other stuff on the doc, like the gateway deployment topologies, for example, same story there could be useful. Again, though, that's also general Kubernetes gateway stuff, so maybe it lives on Gateway API docs, or maybe not.
Got it. Yeah. So my general takeaway is that there's definitely room to improve docs here and provide some guidance potentially, or at least examples for users. Mitch, I'll sync up with you offline and put you in contact with some folks who are interested in this internally.
Awesome.
Cool.
Thanks, Keith.
We're out of time, but one quick thing I wanted to bring up, Mitch. You weren't here in the first minute, so we moved this to the bottom. There was some discussion about the future of configuration distribution. I think part of that was they wanted to get a PR, Zongo wanted to get a PR merge, which has already been merged, but I think there's also a valid discussion of what the future is, given it's been alpha off by default for like 4 years now. So we should follow up on that. I can maybe bump it to next week if that's the best thing to do, or we can discuss offline more broadly.
You said Zongo's PR merged. We removed the block on it.
Yeah, technically, I mean, it resolved all the issues, so it became a much smaller PR. So
okay, thanks. I'll go check that out.
And we added a
So
test too, so yay.
So this, should we move to next week?
Yeah, let's move to next week. It's a bit more scoped now as well. I'll just paste it there. I'll shrink down the scope to what we actually need to talk about. I did not think we were going to get through everything, so good job, everyone. I can see you in the next meeting.
Oh, by the way, I cannot attend the next meeting. John, can you run it?
Yep.
Thanks.